Senator, thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about this new book. Why did you choose to write it?
Well, I wanted to get across one idea, which was that if you really want to make a difference, if you really want to change things, the way to do the best job of it is to find a way to get yourself elected to public office or go to work for somebody else who has been. A lot of people today don't want to do that, but if you want to change things, Bill Haslam said, for example, that he was surprised after being mayor, after being governor, and he's got pretty considerable ability himself. He said how much more he could do in public office than he could in private office.
Why is that, Senator?
Well, you have more opportunities. Like if Tennessee doesn't have the auto industry and you have an opportunity to go to Japan to recruit Nissan, well, the governor is the one who does that. Or if you want to fix the backlog in the Great Smoky Mountains for maintenance, get the trails fixed, get the bathrooms so they work, and fix that maintenance backlog. Only way you can do that is to pass a law appropriating more money to do it. So many decisions that we all talk about and worry about and get mad about, in the end, have to be decided by the mayor, the councilman, the senator, the school board member, and those people are elected.
I think Howard Baker said something to the effect, if he had to do it all over again, he would have run for school board because that's where the real decisions in a community are made.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, and there's a lot more satisfaction to it. Of course, you get more 3 a.m. phone calls from an irate parent or somebody. But if you really want your schools in Maryville to be good, it's up to the people here to do it, and the school board members they elect, and the other officials they elect. This little city spends, I think, 70% of its budget on schools. Well, who makes that decision? The people who are elected.
And so this book is encouraging people to take a chance to run for public office?
Yeah, I use the example of Bill Frist, who came by my office in 1994. I was getting ready to run for president, and he had never voted. He said, I'm going to run for the United States Senate. I said, why would you do that? Why would you give up being one of the world's leading heart and lung transplant surgeons? He said, well, today I can get a phone call, fly to Chattanooga, cut out a heart, put it in a igloo cooler on ice, try to get it back to Vanderbilt Hospital in 4 hours, do an 8-hour operation, and 1 year later I might meet one person who thanks me for saving his or her life. If I'm a senator, maybe I can save 1 million lives. And after he was a senator, he worked with President George W. Bush, and they created PEPFAR, which saved 26 million lives of people around the world who had HIV/AIDS.
You talk about, in some of the excerpts that I read in your book, about 500,000 people in office in some form or fashion right now in the country. What's your message to them in the current political climate?
Make every day count. What I used to say to my colleagues in the Senate was, it's hard to get here, it's hard to stay here, so while you're here, you might as well try to accomplish something good for the country. It sounds naive to say it, but I woke up every day thinking that I might be able to do something good for my state or my country. I went to bed most nights thinking that I had.
You wrote another book, the Little Plaid book, that is meant to be a little advice book for people who are running for office or considering it. Yeah. How is this book different?
Well, a lot of the chapters in my new book begin with lessons from the Little Plaid book. For example, walk in parades. If it's a Mule Day parade, walk at the front. So I've got a chapter on my walk across the state, and it starts with that.
Can you share any other excerpts that you haven't shared publicly that you think might encourage people to give this book a read?
Well, I think a good example is the passage of what we call the 21st Century Cures Act. You hear a lot about the COVID vaccine. Well, that was a great triumph, really, of the Trump administration. We had never created a vaccine that fast in the history of the world. It never saved as many people, millions of people. And it came with a lot of Democrats and a Republican president working together to do it. And after it was over, some of the authority that we passed in those laws created medical miracles, like today, if I have leukemia or if I have Parkinson's disease, the doctors can take some blood out of my neck, re-engineer the cells, put it back in, and it can treat Parkinson's disease, and it can cure the cancer. That wasn't true just a few years ago.
You offer at one point in your book, I love the rats in the barn reference.
Well, most of them live in East Tennessee.
But worried friends always ask Lamar Alexander, can we survive this? How often are you hearing that question now?
I hear it a lot. I mean, people are worried about the country. They're not optimistic about its future. Mary Ann Wanamaker, who's dean of the Howard Baker School of Public Policy, told me that they didn't name it the School of Government because young people don't like government. They named it School of Public Policy. Yet, she's got a lot of students because they want to change things, and they know if they want to change things, if they want to, of course you can do a lot in the private life, but if you really want to make the most difference, you want to keep the country from falling apart, help the most people, get yourself elected or go to work for somebody who has been.
And this book encourages more people to do that.
Yes, it does. I mean, and you don't have to be a United States Senator. You can be on the Maryville City School Board, or you can be the Knoxville County Commissioner. As Senator Baker used to say, you can make decisions close to home that make a difference, and you get a sense of satisfaction of that because you can see that happen.
You mentioned the word optimism. It sounds like your book strikes an optimistic tone.
It is optimistic. I hope not naive, but I think we need some optimism right now. And there's no reason we shouldn't be. I mean, look, we're as a country, we produce 26% of all the money in the world every year for just 4% of the people. We have the strongest military, most of the best universities. Nobody has national laboratories like we do, like the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. We've got people everywhere who are trying to get in our country, not trying to get out of it. So that's not a recipe for despair. We just need to remember what made this a great country as we come upon our 250th birthday and keep doing it.
Let's talk about the lessons learned. Senator, you have learned a lot, and you've had more than 60 years in public office of some kind or another.
Well, one lesson is, and my late wife, Honey, really taught me this, it helps to have a sense of purpose and a sense of humor if you're going to be in public life. Honey always said to me, or she did when I wanted to run for governor the second time after losing the first, she said, wait a minute, we're not going to do this unless you can tell me why you want to be governor and what you hope to accomplish. So that's one. The second is that if you're in the United States Senate, it's hard to get here, hard to stay here. While you're here, try to accomplish something good for the country. Another is stay in Washington, D.C. long enough to be vaccinated but not infected. And follow the example of Ted Williams, who hit a home run in his last at bat, rather than be carried off the field. I retired when I was 80 and came home, and I avoided what Senator Bingaman of New Mexico used to call the 3 Ds of public life: disgrace, defeat, and death.
You reflect on your time as governor, your time as senator. Is there another small story that you have in here from the campaign trail that you think helps paint a picture of Tennessee or East Tennessee that people might not know having not lived here?
Well, one story from the campaign trail really came from Middle Tennessee. I spent the night in Las Casas with a family. The mother was a school secretary, father was a postmaster. I spent the night with people on my walk, 73 different families. And the mom said to me, I'm sad because I have twin boys. They're very smart. They'll never find a job around here. A year later, I went to Japan. Nissan came to Tennessee and landed right in that county. 25 years later, one of those twin boys was the plant manager for the Nissan plant. His brother, twin brother, also worked there, and the grandson that she thought she would never see was also working there. So you can see how if you have a chance to be in public life, it's not just politics, it's not esoteric. It gets down to real people, and you can see the effect it has on that family.
The potential for generational change.
Yeah, that's a big change. I mean, in 1980, the year when I was elected governor, it was 1978, we didn't have an auto industry in Tennessee. We had one auto supplier. Today we have 1,000 and several big auto plants, and it's a third of our manufacturing jobs, and our family incomes have gone up because of it. Now that might have happened anyway, might have been any governor, any set of legislators, but probably not. Probably because a lot of people elected to public office worked hard to make that happen, made it more likely to happen, helped the largest number of people.
Your title hints at the number of presidents that you've served with. And I just want to run down the list. It's 10 presidents.
Yep.
And I'd like to say their names, and you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear their name. Let's start with John F. Kennedy.
Well, I barely worked for him. I was in the Justice Department when I was a law student. What comes to my mind is inspiration, because for those of us who were young at that time, it was the coat thrown over the shoulder, touch football playing, let's do something for our country.
Lyndon Johnson.
Wheeling and dealing, with effect.
Richard Nixon.
The most consequential president, on his way to being the most consequential president our country had in recent times. I mean, he opened China, ended the Vietnam War, a number of other things, derailed by Watergate.
Gerald Ford.
Put the country first. He was the only Republican that Democrats would have picked to be Nixon's vice president after Agnew. He pardoned the draft dodgers, he pardoned Nixon. He knew that was politically damaging, but he put the country first.
Jimmy Carter.
He came to Washington not knowing much about it and brought with him more people who knew less than he did. But by the end, he did some good things, but he got off to a slow start.
Ronald Reagan.
The president who best fit the office with whom I had a chance to work. Partly because, like Lincoln, he invited in his inner circle his opponents. George Bush was his vice president, who ran against him. Jim Baker was his chief of staff, who was Bush's campaign manager. Then Howard Baker, who ran against him, became his chief of staff. And he listened to them.
George H.W. Bush.
The nicest person ever to be president, and probably the one with the greatest understanding and capacity for foreign affairs. I mean, he presided over the end of the Soviet Union, the putting together of Germany again, and he was wise enough to go into Iraq and then stop and not get mired down in it.
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton, first president of my generation. Morally, he was a disappointment, but he was the best politician of the presidents with whom I met. He moved the Democratic Party toward the center, won 2 elections, and turned out to be a very effective and charismatic president.
George W. Bush.
The most normal of the presidents I work with. I mean, George W. is the one you'd most likely go on a camping trip with or not have a beer with because he doesn't drink. And his greatest achievement was probably how he led the country after 9/11.
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama represented a sort of atonement for our country after the Civil War and after our racial background by electing a black president. He came along at the time of the iPhone, Facebook, the beginning of the digital democracy, and his liberalism fit that, and it upset a lot of people. He was hard to get to work with, but once I worked with him on some pretty big things, he was good to his word, smartest guy in the room, put the country first.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. I agree with a lot of his issues, both of his first term and as he began his second term. I even agree with him about well done steak. But I don't like his behavior and his character. And I think that's very important. If I had to pick a criteria for the most important criteria for a president of the United States, it would be character and temperament. I'm a very Republican, but more important to me than whether you lean left or right is your character and temperament, particularly in a job that big with that much consequence to the decisions you make.
And if I'm hearing you correctly, you don't think his character and temperament fit this job well?
No, they don't. Now, he has a lot of talent. I mean, he's the best communicator in the country. I like the fact he's secured the border. I like the fact that he's gotten rid of this, or trying to get rid of all this wokeism, this dividing us by gender and race. I like the idea of more nuclear power, which he does. So many of his issues I agree with. I worked well with him. I worked with him on the Great American Outdoors Act, which wouldn't have happened if he hadn't done it. And that was designed to cut the maintenance backlog in the Smokies and the other parts of our national park system in half. It's a great accomplishment. His creating the vaccine was a great accomplishment under his administration. But character and temperament is key to me.
You don't mention Joe Biden because he wasn't president when you worked with him, but you worked with him in the Senate.
I did.
What can you say about Joe Biden as president?
Well, I worked with him as vice president for 4 years. He was very instrumental in the 21st Century Cures Act. Joe Biden, Senator Dirksen, Senator Baker's father-in-law, once told him, he said, "Howard, remember to enjoy the luxury of an unexpressed thought." Joe Biden doesn't follow that rule very well. He talks a long time. But he was well-intentioned. He was key to passing 21st Century Cures. It included the cancer moonshot. His son died of cancer. So he was a well-meaning senator and a well-meaning vice president and president.
Just a couple more current event questions, and then I'd like to close about the influence of your parents on your life as a politician. But just quickly, Senator, I'd like to go through these topics with similar pace, but the future of TVA, when you hear about that, what runs through your mind?
Nuclear power. I mean, the key to the future of TVA, they need more power, and they need to be the leader in the country in creating nuclear power, which takes a while. Now, they're actually on a pretty good track on that. They're out ahead of most parts of the country. And they need to avoid these big data centers, which come in and use a lot of electricity, bring very few jobs. The data centers are okay, but they need to pay the bill. So my recommendation to TVA is bring in the high-tech people, but make them pay for the electricity so our monthly electric bills don't go up.
It shouldn't be broken up. TVA works well the way it is?
Yes, it works well the way it is. I mean, how are you going to break it up? The one thing you can be sure of, if you broke TVA up or if you sold it, is that rates would go sky high. You'd suddenly be paying California rates and living in Tennessee. What most of us have gotten used to and sometimes don't realize is that TVA electric rates, our electric bills we pay every month, are among the lowest in the country. And they are for our businesses too, which keep jobs here.
Is East Tennessee going to be the center for the nuclear renaissance that you've talked about for years?
Yes, I believe it will be. I mean, I would like to see your station and the newspapers and everybody talk more about what I like to call the Oak Ridge Corridor. Mm-hmm. It's a name that everybody in the world knows, and now suddenly President Trump, all the people who are interested in climate change are together on the need for nuclear power to produce emission-free electricity, and a lot of it. And where in the world do you go to find as much technology as you do along the Oak Ridge Corridor? So we have the largest energy laboratory. We have a good beginning to that. And I appreciate what Governor Lee and the other officials are doing to encourage nuclear power along the Oak Ridge Corridor.
The Department of Education, you led it.
Yeah.
What's its future?
Well, we really don't need a Department of Education. I mean, every Republican nominee for president has been opposed to it ever since it was created. I mean, we need to give out the scholarships. An agency can do that. We need for the president to talk about higher standards for education. But as far as K through 12, about 9% of the money for it comes from the federal government, and that should be given to parents and let them use it to choose the schools. What I would like for President Trump to recognize is, one, you have to get Congress's approval to get rid of the Department of Education. And two, as long as you're getting Washington out of the Department of Education, kindergarten through the 12th grade, keep it out of colleges and universities too. The White House has proposed basically putting Washington in charge of 6,000 colleges and universities. That's a bad idea.
You mentioned it, Senate power. Has the Senate and Congress itself abdicated more of its power to the executive branch in the last couple of years?
One historian I heard last summer said that this era reminds him of the Roman Republic, where the Republic was crumbling and the Senate was still meeting, but it was a shell of itself. At the beginning of President Trump's second term, the Senate has not done its job. I mean, the Republican majority, it doesn't work for the president, it works for the people. You take an oath to the Constitution, not to one president or another president. Now, in the second 6 months of this year, or just the end of last year, the senators are speaking up. Like Senator Cruz said the Federal Communications Commission was acting like the mafioso for threatening a network. Senator Barrasso, a doctor, said he was concerned about Secretary Kennedy's attitude on vaccines. Senator Thune, the Republican leader, said, we're not going to change the filibuster, so this president or any president's proposals can just run through Congress like a freight train. So the president needs the advice of the Republican senators rather than just other people who wander into his office. And I'm glad to see Republican senators speaking up more, being more independent. That doesn't mean they're disloyal. It means they're loyal to the Constitution and they're trying to help President Trump be a better president.
So they may have ceded some power, but they're working to get it back?
Well, I hope so. I mean, the Constitution gives the Senate, the Congress, authority over all appropriations, trade, tariffs, and taxes. The presidents have been taking that away. The reason that's important, Justice Scalia, whom Republicans revere, said our freedom doesn't depend on a Bill of Rights. Every tin-horn dictator has a Bill of Rights, he said. It depends on the checks and balances of the system. We don't want a king. We want a messy republic where the president makes a proposal, the Senate says, let's do it this way or that way, and then they come to a conclusion. That's the basis for our freedom, and that depends on Republican senators speaking up and giving the president their advice.
Couple more current event questions. Social media.
Well, social media is a source of big changes and a lot of problems. I mean, everything changed in our country about 2007, 2008, when these little devices allowed people to instantly express their feelings in public. It's caused, in politics, it's changed the parties so that if you want to win a Republican or Democratic primary, you say the most extreme things. That allows you to get the most attention and raise the most money. So suddenly we have 5% of the registered voters participating in primaries, usually nominating extreme candidates, and people who would like to vote for someone in the general election who wants to govern don't have anyone to vote for. So we have to learn to live with this digital democracy, just like we've learned to live with books, TV, radio. We've learned to live with it.
Immigration.
Well, the president deserves a great credit for securing the southern border. Now he is in a position to do what's needed to be done for a long time, and that's to take steps to create a legal status for people who have been here for years, who are paying taxes, working in the schools, living next door. There are 12, 13, 14 million of them, and who are following the law. If they're following the law, if they've served in the military, let them earn a legal status and be here. That's the second step of immigration, and President Trump has the ability to make that. Fact is, in my first meeting with him, when I was a senator and he had just come into office in the first term, I suggested to him that just as Nixon went to China, President Trump was in a position to solve the immigration problem. One, by securing the border, and second, by figuring out what to do with all the people already here who are not breaking the law, who are not criminals. He said, I'd like to do that. Then somebody at the table objected and he never did it. Now he can do it, and I'd like to see him do it.
We were close with George W. Bush.
That's true. I mean, I voted for a bill with Bush and Obama. Bush had a bill in 2007, and then there was one in 2014. And it was one that secured the border and created a legal status for people already here who followed the law. And in the Senate, it got 67 votes, but the House didn't take it up. With President Trump's support, he could finish the job on immigration, secure the border, create a legal status for people who follow the law and who are already here.
Let's close with what you learned from your parents as educators. What did they teach you that laid the groundwork for 60 years of public service?
Well, I had the great advantage of growing up in Maryville, Tennessee, with my parents, both educators. My dad was the elementary school principal at West Side. My mom had a kindergarten and nursery school for more than 30 years in her backyard. So by example, I knew that education was important. And my dad took me down to the courthouse to meet Congressman Howard Baker Sr. when I was 10. And I thought I'd met the most respected man I was ever likely to meet, and I'm sure that made a difference in my attitude toward public service. My dad was on the local Republican executive committee. He counted the votes on election night. We watched the national conventions, or actually listened to them back then. And so I learned to respect public service and to value education. And growing up in Maryville, why, so far as you know, anything is possible here, because everybody pats you on the back and encourages you and sets you off on some trajectory that you don't know what will happen. So I was lucky, and it's given me a lot of opportunities that I'm grateful for.
When people finish your book, what do you hope they walk away with?
I hope they walk away with the feeling I had that I woke up every day thinking I might be able to do something good for my state or country, and went to bed most nights thinking I had. And that they feel more optimistic about our future, and that they themselves may want to spend a few years in public life.
So when you hear that question, can we survive this? The answer should be yes, of course.
The answer is yes. I have a friend in Townsend, Delmer Kaler, who is a home builder. And he crawled under my house one day and found a dead rat and held it up and showed it to me. And I said, Delmer, I wouldn't want your job. He said, Lamar, I'd a lot rather have my job crawling under your house to find a dead rat than your job up there in Washington, D.C. You know, I'd have been in a fight every day if I'd had your job, he said. But what I'd like for Delmer and my friends to know is that that if you want things to happen right, you need to elect some people, or be one yourself, who are up there trying to get that done.
Of all the jobs you've been elected to or appointed to, what was your favorite?
Governor. It's like asking, which of your children do you like the best? But the governor's job is like Moses. Let's go this way, here's a strategy, let me see if I can persuade you I'm right. The senator's job is more like being a drum major. You have to recruit the marchers, pick the music, gather up the instruments, set them on the route, try to keep them from marching in a ditch, even let a couple of them march out front as soloists, and maybe you'll get to where you want to go. That can be satisfying too. But I really liked being governor.